This Yamaha Thunderace that I've been rebuilding, well, this is the second time its engine has been on my workbench broken. Let me explain. This Thunderace I picked up for free had a damaged frame. So I picked up a second-hand frame to swap all the parts over. When I was stripping the bike, things took a wrong turn when I broke an exhaust stud removing the old exhaust. I then made things worse because, well, when I was drilling this broken stud out, the drill bit snapped off. So luckily I had a subscriber who sent me part of the top end as a replacement. Then putting it all back together again, I snapped the very last camshaft clamp bolt. So wait a minute, let me just step in for a second because I am simply a beginner, just sharing my journey. And this is the very first time that I have attempted to rebuild the top end of a 4-cylinder motorcycle. And not any 4-cylinder motorcycle, no. This is a 20-valve, 1000cc sports bike engine. Now what then happened was I got myself this workshop, finally completed the rebuild, then installed the engine. And given all of the issues I've had with this engine, how would you imagine the first start went? Well, it started. Oh dear, we've got an oil leak. But it spat the clutch rod out, simply because I hadn't installed the clutch slave cylinder. With that then installed, I tried to start it again. But no luck. So I carried out a compression test. It's not looking good. So where are we now then? Well, I concluded that it must be the gasket, because given the low compression readings and the fact that this gasket is actually designed to crush seal one time only, it so happens that I crushed this gasket multiple times. So the gasket has got to be the problem, hasn't it? Or is it? In the previous episode, I set up this little test to check if the valves are seated correctly. I placed water along the tops of the valves like little puddles to see if they leaked. Now I know a lot of you in the comment section of that upload did tell me to not use water, and I hear you. However, it's a bit late now and pretty obvious that these valves have not seated anyway, because, well, there's no water left in that one. There's a dribble of water left in that one, and yeah, these two, well, there's not much water left in those either. I don't know if that's a positive thing or a negative thing, but I might have found the issue. You know, I kind of feel it is a positive. As disheartening as this rebuild has been, I just continue to learn more and more, and so I get straight to work on pulling this top end apart using a spring compressor to compress the valve spring, and once compressed, removing these tiny little collets using a magnet. Then releasing the spring compressor and removing the valve spring and the valve. I repeat this process on the remaining 7 exhaust valves. Then pull the top plate off and remove all 12 of the inlet valves. Okay, so all 20 of those valves have been removed. What I've done is I've punched them through this cardboard and tried to keep them all in order. The rest of the head is all in little pots, you know, I'm trying to keep it as tidy as possible. The next thing though, I don't know if I should go ahead and replace the piston rings. I did mention it in the previous upload. Now I'm considering going even further with this rebuild and whip this part off and install some new piston rings. I'm not 100% sure yet, so don't hold me to it. So I'm going to be very honest. At this stage, if I were to proceed and replace the piston rings, I could be asking for so much trouble. Don't know what to do. Do I do it? I mean, I got the Thunderace for free at least, so that's a bonus, but still. Yeah, what do I do? I don't know. So while I had a good think about that, I went about taking this grinding paste and applying a small amount to a valve, and then grind the valve into its port. This will create a seal between the valve and the valve seat. This process is called lapping. This in fact will be the second time I do this, but now I know how important this process is, I spend hours completing all 20 inlet and exhaust valves. So I think that's a lapping complete. I have spent roughly 5 hours lapping those valves in. 5 hours, absolutely crazy. 20 valves lapped in. Next steps though is I want to make sure that I remove any excess grit because that could be catastrophic. Let's hope that this time around I've done it correctly. Now to clean any excess grit off, I use GT85 and a clean cloth. GT85 acts as a lubricant and a cleaner, and so this would be suitable in such a delicate area where there might be remaining grit. Now that's all clean, how about we get all of the valves and the springs back into place? So I was going to time lapse this part, but it is so blurry condensing a 2-hour recording. Let me tell you, this is a painfully slow process. Okay, so right now I am running a little test checking for leaks, and I'm doing that by, well, I've placed petroleum, super unleaded, because I'm a super kind of guy. I'm not using water because I read all your comments in the last video. You suggested I should use fuel. So I'm doing that and it's looking promising. And I even, look, okay, because I learned a thing or two, I even can tell you why you would use petroleum over water, because it has a lower viscosity, which means it's more suitable for searching out any leaks. Next then we reinstall all of the valve buckets and shims. It's crucial that these go back in the exact port they came out of to ensure the valve clearances remain in check. So my girlfriend has just brought me this beautiful bacon and more bacon and sausages bagel. Oh. Right, piston rings, talk to me. I've had a good think about it, and listen, okay, I know I said I was going to replace them, and I wanted to, but I had a good think, and considering the amount of trouble I've had with this bike, I think piston rings, for them to be changed, is probably a step too far for me. At my level of experience, and given everything that's gone on with this bike, it's not such a good idea. So I'm going to leave the piston rings as they are. I don't believe actually, and I've listened to some of your comments, I've read some of your comments, and I've had some advice. I don't think it's necessary to change those rings anyway. The bike's done roughly 20,000 kilometers. Oh, and let me mention as well, we now have a replacement head gasket. This was the original. Well, I say it was the original. This was new, but as I destroyed it by torquing the head down multiple times, it's destroyed that gasket. It's no longer any good. So I've gone ahead, got myself a new one. And these are designed to crush seal one time only, as I've mentioned. But yeah, this was a £60 mistake I made. And you think £60 for that is crazy, right? However, when you consider what a head gasket does, it doesn't only seal the compression or the combustion process, it also separates the oil from the water. So it's ever so crucial. And when you consider that, then you think, okay, I see why it costs so much money. But if you're watching this video and you want to learn anything, learn from what I do wrong, all right? Because listen, I'm a professional, mate, all right? Right then, let's speed through this. New gasket on, and with the head fitted, I provisionally tighten the head bolts up by hand. Then using my torque wrench, I follow the sequence in the workshop manual. Firstly, torquing the bolts to 20 Newton meters, then repeating the sequence, and this time to 41 Newton meters. Then I torque the little 8mm bolts down on the top plate, working from the inside out in a criss-cross pattern. With that done, it's then time to install the camshafts. The challenge here is setting up the camshafts onto the chain so that the cams are lined up and in time both on the exhaust cam and the inlet cam. And before we install the camshaft clamps, we add a little squirt of the good stuff. Now it's time for the clamps. We are advised in the manual to work from the inside out, so as to prevent any damage to the camshafts or to the head. This is another delicate part of the rebuild, and so, in great Bikes of Rye fashion, this is where it goes wrong. Again. As I look to finish torquing these 10mm bolts up to 10 Newton meters, this particular bolt just keeps turning. You have got to be kidding me. Camshaft bolt once again, torquing it up 10 Newton meters, all right? It's not a lot. The last bolt at the end there, the thread has gone blunt. I am just completely fed up with this now. Completely and utterly fed up. This is what happens when you remove them, tighten them, remove them, tighten them. It's just weak. As I say, 10 Newton meters. It's basically hand tight with a tiny little nip up. I'm not over tightening them, I'm using a torque wrench. And this is what happens. If that has wrecked the thread, it's all got to come back off again. Can't be bothered with this, honestly. Now the only saving grace is when the last camshaft clamp bolt broke on me. There's two types, there's a short one and a long one, and I ordered both the short and long one because I wasn't 100% on the part numbers, and so I got one of each. So I actually have a spare one. Here is a spare. It's exactly the same. And I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna try and tighten it up. We might be very lucky here. Might be lucky. Please. Please. Now this was not a good sign. The new bolt did not like this one bit. All right. So, not sure what's happened there, but I am not going to stress this bolt. I'm going to remove this cap. I've got a tap and die kit, so I might send a new tap down it. But honestly, this is nerve-wracking. If this goes wrong again, then I'm just gonna... I'm not sure what I'm gonna do, to be honest. I've still got to do the top setup. I've still got to do those up yet. What if they go wrong as well? You know, this Thunderace rebuild has had so many setbacks that at this stage, I questioned myself, is it even worth it? Will it ever see the open road again? With a tap, I approached this precariously. This aluminium block is like butter, so I had to take my time here. Too much force with this tap and it could be game over. With the tap complete, I reinstall the clamp. Then with my torque wrench, I start with 8 Newton meters, which is okay, then 9 Newton meters, okay, and finally 10 Newton meters. It's torqued up to 10 Newton meters. Actually, I could feel I had the shakes, my heart. However, still need to do the top bank of camshaft clamp bolts. Oh, it's nerve-wracking. Let's torque them up. Let's torque them up. And as we proceed with caution, all of the inlet clamp bolts, surprisingly, were good to me. Must be my lucky day. Okay, so now we've got everything essentially torqued down, it's all in place. I'm gonna put the engine through a couple of rotations using this socket on the front sprocket. Obviously, we want to ensure that everything is rotating nicely and freely. I don't want to feel any sort of resistance. We're in 5th gear, so it should rotate relatively easy. So let's do it. Dear oh dear, honestly, the amount of hours I've put into this engine. So I need to take all of this back off again because it's not quite timed. I've put it through a couple of rotations. The hours of pain this rebuild has become. Right, let me sort that out and then I'll come back. We'll jump to me having it in time because this video is going to be long enough as it is. Let's do it. All right, happy to report we are all timed up after many hours. Many hours. Many hours. But we're close. We are close. We're going to proceed with caution. Everything's talked up. I've double checked and double checked. So let's continue. Home straight now, we install the spark plugs. Then the camshaft cover, which I painted with a brush using hammerite. It's a masterpiece, isn't it? I know, relax. And lastly, this little screw cap for the crankshaft timing markers. My. This has been a complete and utter epic. I have been at this engine for days. I am wired, and quite honestly, I'm at the point where I'm not having as much fun as I was previously. I've taken that head apart around about 10 times, you know. I mean, it's just so tedious. And of course, along the way, I've just learned that engines can be so delicate and you have to be ever so patient. You have to follow the exact procedures. You can't cut corners. You can't rush it. You're always worried about missing something. Have I torqued all of the bolts up? Have I followed the manual to the T? And so we're at this point now where the engine is complete and it's ready to go back in the frame. However, very late now. This video has been ever so long. You know, I am a little bit nervous that this engine is still gonna fail. Who knows? But we shall find out, I suppose, in the next upload. If you enjoy my channel and you haven't yet done so, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you on another one. Goodbye for now. I'm knackered. Oh.